This video is powered by Dr. Cinik, one of the world's leading hair transplant centres and a top choice among football superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link below for your free consultation.
AFTV, Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0. Arsenal suffer their first league defeat of the season. I've got Turkish with me. Turkish, absolutely not the result that we needed today.
Nah, man. I just want you to ask me some questions because I don't know where to start, I'll be honest with you. I mean, 2-0 to Bournemouth regardless of 10 men. It was an embarrassing performance, an embarrassing result.
Absolutely. All right, so let's, in terms of the questions, let's go even from, the starting lineup. Obviously, we saw the midfield three that we did today with Partey, Declan Rice and Marino. I think one of the things that we highlighted on the watch-along was that there's a severe lack of creativity in that midfield. Do you think that's one of the factors that has costed us today?
Yeah. And people are probably ready for this, but it dates back to the transfer window. People like to say, I want to, point to the transfer window an awful lot, but we must, because we had a few absences today, unfortunately, but I think creating chances has been a problem for us all season. Year on year, it's been a problem for us. Now, people can argue, 3 of the 8 games, 10 men, and 3 of the 8 games away, tough, Villa, Tottenham, City, and the metrics will be affected by those types of games and the incidents in the game. Fair enough, but in the first 30 minutes today before the red card, did we create anything? No. So if Odegaard missing leads to a drop-off in creativity as much as it does and as much as we've seen, that means we're light in that position. And it was naive of us to think we could go in light in any position when you're going up against City, let alone in a position that's been so vital for us. Forget Odegaard as a captain who's been quality. Odegaard as a player, he is quality. I'm not asking for like, but what I'm asking for is someone that's not 17, someone that started, games at the highest level. That's what I'm asking for. But instead, we leave ourselves with a 17-year-old where, in the end, we've got to bring him on 2-0 down. We're not. Is all hope out the window? No. There's still a lot of games to go. But already game week 8, some of the deficiencies we left ourselves with in the summer are rearing its head, unfortunately. Because it is unfortunate, but at the same time, how many seasons has this been the case? Maybe not last season. I agree, last season's summer transfer window was the only transfer window in our history of Emirates that we all felt the confidence that we go again. We missed out on the title, but we go again. This summer was a very different feeling, and I think as much as people want to skirt around what I believe is the obvious, it has come back to bite us now. In the first 8 games, we've dropped points in 3 of those. That's not ideal.
Of course, I understand. But obviously, staying on that midfield three, the biggest change that for me that we saw in today's game, and we've been seeing it a lot in the previous games with Odegaard's absence, was Leandro Trossard in that creative role, as per se, that 10 role. Do you think that was the biggest mistake that Mikel made today? Obviously, we know that Leandro Trossard didn't have a great game. I could go as far to say a poor game on that left-hand side. But do you think it was a mistake bringing him in from that central position over to that left-hand side?
I'm going to bust another myth today. Trossard hasn't been great in the 10. He's done a good job.
2 goals against Leicester?
Yeah, but Leicester's Leicester. That's the game where we created so many chances. We should have been clear. That's the game where it's the anomaly this season because we should have been 4 up before they even got back into the game. But Trossard as a 10 hasn't been great. Far from it. He's been good. His work rate's there, but that tends to be the default when you can't praise someone for quality or someone for decisiveness in the final third or wherever they play. The default in this generation is, he works hard, he creates some space. Please. The number 10 position is a very important position, and we had a very important player there. So yes, Trossard has stepped in and done okay, but it hasn't been good enough that I'd say, all right, if Trossard started in the 10 today, we would have beaten them. I can't say that.
Of course, fair enough. And obviously, moving on from that, the biggest talking point, it was talking about it at half-time, they were talking about it after the game, the sending off for William Saliba. Now, of course, that means it was only a 1-match suspension, but it couldn't potentially come against a worse team in Liverpool. If you look at it, and obviously it was a comedy of errors, but is there one player specifically that you blame more in the situation, or is it just you've got to take your share of the blame?
Firstly, I'd say the biggest moment in this game was Mikel taking off Sterling for Kiwior, but we'll get into that next. I just needed to get that in there because the red card's a red card.
Yeah, there's no disputing it.
No debate. When I saw it, I said red, so I was surprised to see the ref bring out yellow. I then comforted myself by saying, all right, he's made a decision, so VAR can't get involved, but what do I know? The rules change year in, year out, so they got involved. Am I complaining? No, it was a red card. Very silly from Saliba first. Very silly from Saliba secondary. It was first and foremost Trossard that made the mistake. But listen, Saliba's in that position and there's a hell of a lot for the attacker to do. Saliba could get back, the attacker could slip, the attacker could miss. You just leave it to chance. What he done, he knew that it was a red card because his reaction indicated that, and when it was overturned to a red, head down, he knew what it was. Last man, there's not much anyone can do to argue against that decision, whether they want to say VAR shouldn't have got involved or not. It was the right decision. Full stop. If it was against us, would be screaming red.
Absolutely. Listen, I agree with you, but obviously there are some out there that don't believe it was a red card, and I think this is the sort of the process behind that is obviously they think Ben White might have a chance of getting there. He's quite far out from goal. So what would you say to people that have that defence for it?
Wake up. Because the people that have a defence for this are the people that have a defence for everything and anything that goes against Arsenal, wrong for Arsenal, negative, pessimistic. These are we have a lot of those types of fans in the fan base. A lot of clubs do, where rainbows are shining every single day of the week. But the fact of the matter is, we could argue Ben White gets back. We could argue that whoever did, Evan Nilsson lobs Raya with his first touch. Who knows? We could argue Evan Nilsson slips. Everything else after the fact is an assumption. The fact is, in that moment, he was last man. In that moment, Ben White was 2 yards even behind the ball and Saliba. So it's a far stretch to... Listen, let's focus on ourselves. Let's focus on Trossard, who didn't, play well and cost us in that moment. A moment of stupidity from Saliba, which I can excuse partly because in that moment, it's a split-second decision to do something. He chose a foolish one. It cost us. But Trossard is the one I look at and think, what was you doing? What was you actually doing? As an experienced player, Bournemouth were tight on him. Bournemouth weren't letting him, turn round. And that's probably the best way to mark Trossard, because back to the player, he doesn't really have... He has a turn in him, but on the wing, that's limited because he's close to the touchline. So Bournemouth were doing a great job on him, and I think that resulted in that pass because Trossard, the ball's coming to him. He's anticipating someone coming in the back, which was round the corner, but he wants to release it quickly. Very silly, very poor and inexcusable. And then he comes off the pitch. And when he comes off the pitch in the second half, he's come off like he's upset that he's being taken off. You're the reason we are down right now. Saliba's played a part for sure, but you are the reason we're down right now. Don't act like your shit don't stink. Come off the pitch, because when you come on and you score and you do the cold as ice celebration, I'm for that. You're doing your thing. You think you deserve to start, do your thing. But in my opinion, his starts have further indicated to me that he's a great 12th man. He's a great option off the bench. Starting for me, it doesn't work. And today, I'm sorry, but that was a big mistake, and it didn't only cost us this game. It could cost us Liverpool next week with Saliba missing.
Of course, absolutely. And obviously you mentioned Saliba's red card there. Now, there was a lot of debate about the decisions that Mikel made in terms of the changes as a result of the red card. Raheem Sterling comes off instead of Leandro Trossard, who was partly responsible for the goal. Kiwior comes on. I think it's right to say that you wasn't particularly happy about that change.
Nah. Are we a good team, Frank?
Yes.
So... going down to 10 men, we shouldn't really panic, especially against a Bournemouth, right?
I agree.
So Declan Rice slotting in next to Gabriel, surely that could have saw us to half-time. Who was our best attacker in the first 30 minutes? It was Sterling. And this is coming from someone... People need to get used to this with me. I can criticise and I can praise. In the first 25 minutes, Sterling was our only real threat in attack. He was taking on the fullbacks. He was beating one, beating two. He was causing some problems. He was the only one really causing problems in attack. He was getting into the box. And, one or two openings came from his side. To take him off in that moment, I can't lie, I feel like it's a bit of a default now with Mikel to go a bit subdued, go a bit hesitant once we're with 10 men. I can understand it against Brighton. They're a great side on their day. They can play football and they can really cause you problems. I can understand it against City. They're the best side in the league. They've won the Premier League 4 years in a row. I can understand going down to 10 men and setting up in a certain way or making a decision quickly to ensure the game remains in some sort of control. Against Bournemouth, why? How can you take off Sterling when Trossard's having a mare And he's also cost us with that pass, doing absolutely nothing. And you take off Sterling, who also happens to be one of 2 outlets we have. The other one being on the bench because he's got a tendon injury. So you've taken off our main outlet, the one that was actually causing problems. That was Sterling's best 25 minutes for us. I'm not saying he was Cristiano Ronaldo. What I'm saying is it was a poor attacking performance from us, even with 11 men. But Sterling was behind any little moments we did have. You don't take that guy off. He's also got experience. It's not like you're taking off a youngster that hasn't been there and done that before. Yeah. So I feel like Mikel made a big error there, because it kind of indicates, all right, we're taking off our main outlet. We've got no pacing behind. If a corner from Bournemouth gets headed out and we're 3-on-1, that's going to turn into a 3-on-7 because of the lack of pace. We don't have it. And on top of that, we're not clinical enough, because then Martinelli, let's talk about him in the second half. He comes on, and I can't, for the life of me, understand how you do not bury that. I don't care if your tendon is hanging off by a thread. I don't care what the problem is. You are through. The pass is perfect. The run-up is perfect. It's central. You can go bottom right, top right. You can go bottom left, top left. You can dink the keeper. You can maybe take a touch. Brown, maybe, I can't even remember if he could have. He probably could have. That's how much time we had in that moment. He hits it straight down the middle. This ain't a young boy anymore. I'm sorry. And we're not a top 4 team anymore. Yeah, when you're a top 4 team, you can allow having, youngsters coming through and learning and not at the top level. We saw at the top level what a loss in game week 19 can do for you in game week 38 or game week 17 or game week 4. When you're going up against City, every game week matters. And in the first 8, we've dropped points in now 3 of them. 2 of them, fair enough. Brighton, City, 10 men, cool. This one, there's no fair enough about it. Going down to 10 men, our fault, deserved red. The substitution from Mikel straight after sucked the life out of the game for me, indicated that we're not going for a win. And then you see in the second half, Martinelli come on, missed that chance, and then the rest is history. Like, for me, we haven't left ourselves with enough this season to be able to change it up like we want to. And I think Ranieri coming on when we're 2-0 down indicates that, because that's not ideal. Do you think Mikel Arteta, in an ideal situation, brings on a 17-year-old when you're 2-0 down? If you do, give your head a wobble, because then ask yourself why he didn't start today, or ask yourself why he didn't start against Southampton. He's 17. He's 17. So I get it. I understand why you don't want to rely on him, but don't tell me this squad is not light. Don't tell me this squad is ready to compete with Manchester City when you take an Odegaard out and the creativity goes in the bin. And you go a man down, and it seems like all the heart and fight go in the bin as well at the moment. Because Man City, that second half, how do you go from that second half against Man City with 10 men where, it didn't look like we was going to concede, to Bournemouth where in the first 2 minutes, Bournemouth should have scored with Semenyo's chance. We were so open, so we neither locked it up defensively with that Kiwior sub or whatever, and we didn't unlock anything in the offensive phases. So all in all, very poor showing from top to bottom, manager included.
Completely agree. Thank you, Tekish.